All right. All right. Welcome back to the Masters in Travel podcast. Today, I am happy to talk about something that might not be the sexiest part of running a business, but it just might be the thing that gives us the most freedom. We're diving into financial clarity, what it means to have clean books, why that matters, and how that clarity can give you peace of mind and actually encourage you to dream bigger. So, joining me is Kinaya from Atlas and Ledger. She's a bookkeeping and financial strategy firm that helps entrepreneurs move from stress and confusion around money to clarity and confidence. Kinaya believes that your books don't just tell you where you've been, they can actually help you create the future you want. And I really just can't wait to dig into this conversation with her, learn not only for myself, but kind of help us all become a little bit more confident with our numbers and with our financial snapshot of our business so that we can have the clarity that we want and find the freedom that we want. So, Kanaya, thank you so much for being on the show today and just sharing all of your brilliance with us. I'd love to start with your story because there's something I'm sure that inspired you to start Atlas and Ledger and work with entrepreneurs, specifically in the travel space. And so, what was that, and how did you kind of come to find your special little niche in this world?
Yeah, so it's a mix between like professional and personal experience. So professionally, I got my degree in economics from Georgia State University. I'm originally from Atlanta. And after college, I worked in the consumer packaged goods industry. And I
Hmm.
worked for a pretty large clean label cottage cheese brand. And what was really cool about that job was it was my first kind of big girl job out of college. And I had the pleasure of working with the director of finance. So I was her like direct report, or I
Okay.
reported it to her.
Hmm.
And she was just such a great teacher, such a wealth of knowledge. And she and I were talking one day, just like a kind of a casual conversation. And I'm like, hey, like, what does it look like to become a director of finance one day? Like, what was your first job? And she mentioned, like, yeah, I started out as a bookkeeper for my parents' business. And so that kind of opened my mind to what the starting place would be for like higher level
Hmm.
finance roles. But it was also really cool because I got to learn how to present financials to C-suite individuals under her guidance. And I thought that was really, really fun. And it was also really challenging because the way you present financials to a finance peer is a lot different than how you present to C-suite individuals because they just don't care about the details. They want to know like the high level things that matter.
Right.
So that was really cool. But from a personal perspective, the reason I wanted to focus on travel is because I had the opportunity to be an exchange student in high school. And
Mm.
travel was just it was such a cool experience. It like opened my mind. And when I started my own business, I knew I wanted to support other entrepreneurs that made travel experiences similar to the one I had possible.
I love that. That is a really cool story that just shows that it's a beautiful thing to be able to take kind of the thing that you're passionate about and say, hey, here is one thing that I love and another thing I'm great at, and where do they intersect and where's the overlap and how can I provide value in that particular space? Because that's a very
Mhm.
specific niche, but I will say from not only my own experience, from but all the advisors that I talk to, that I work with, all that stuff, we need help when it comes to our finances and understanding. And so it's really, really amazing that there are people like you that not only are, yes, you geek out on the numbers, you know, all the technical stuff, but like you also understand the nuance and like the special things that we deal with in this particular industry, because
Mhm.
that's where it also gets tricky. It's like we know what we're doing on the travel side and we know all the like big picture, most of us, the financial aspects, but it's weird. It's not always so straightforward and black and white, and we don't like do our taxes on TurboTax. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot
Mhm.
more
Yeah.
nuanced. There's a lot going on. So I just love that your passion kind of brought you to a space where you were able to use what you're good at and help all of us that are sitting over here creating amazing vacations for people, but struggling a little bit behind behind the curtain.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So Why do you think that entrepreneurs in general, travel people specifically, in service-based industries essentially struggle with this part of their business? Like, what have you seen? What do you kind of know that like this becomes a tension point, so to speak?
Yeah, I think I see three main things overall. And I think the biggest one, number one, is just like the overwhelm
Mm,
with everything that goes into managing the books. It's
hmm
interesting, and I think a lot of people get mixed signals because some places online make bookkeeping seem really simple, like it's just categorizing. But other times, you get into QuickBooks and you're trying to figure out, okay, how does all this work together? And I think that's where people really get stuck with like, okay, I'm supposed to categorize it, but like then put it where? A lot of times I see people miss other steps in the bookkeeping workflow that they didn't even know was a thing. So I think sometimes like the overwhelm with all of the different tools you could use is one thing. And then also sometimes I think people just feel like they are not numbers people
hmm
and they just feel like this is not my domain. It's not my, and it's true. Like I like numbers, but advertising and marketing is tough. Or like that's
hmm
not
hmm
my area of expertise. So there is a level of like leaning into your own genius. But I think sometimes also um, just knowing that looking at your numbers and your data can be simple is a idea that I don't think crosses many people's mind. I think they feel like this has to be hard.
Mm,
And it doesn't necessarily have to be hard. There are some nuances to it. I do recommend, like working with someone who's familiar with the bookkeeping and accounting flow. But once things are clean and clear, it is really simple to be able to glean insights and ask questions that allow you to use your financials to make good decisions. I think it's just you need a little bit of guiding along that path. And then another thing I like to tell my clients is like your business doesn't have to be like everybody else's business. I
mm,
think people go into business to do the thing they love and also support the life they're trying to live. And so
right,
that looks different for everyone. Like
right.
everybody is trying to design their own life. And so I think also letting my clients know that the way you shape your business can support what you want out of it kind of allows people to kind of relax their shoulders a little bit, feel a lot more comfortable because it can work alongside you and work for you.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think that it's so important to really have that vision stay forefront in your mind so that when you start to grow and things get off the ground and you're like, I'm figuring this out, but you are like, where are you headed and why? Because everybody's
Hmm.
why is different. And the knowing of your why will really help you set the right goals, take the right steps, get clear on the right things, all that kind of stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
100% on board with that. So let's lean in a little bit to like the pain points that come with messy books, right? Because we all know them. And if we can be honest with ourselves, I know there's probably a lot of advisors listening who are like, yep, I have been there. I am shaking my head. I haven't opened my QuickBooks in months, even though I have my subscription. I'm swiping my business
Hmm.
card for personal things here or there because it just feels easier and there's money, I think,
Hmm.
to pay for it. Um, or maybe like you're just like looking at your bank balance and you're kind of like, okay, can I afford to go in this fam? Can I afford to invest in this coaching opportunity? I think so, maybe, but it's kind of a guess, right? So we don't really know what our numbers are actually saying. And I
Hmm.
know for a lot of business owners, travel advisors, travel entrepreneurs, what have you, that can feel really heavy because it's hard to know if you're making the right decision at the right time. So, from your perspective and what you have seen with people that you've worked with, what are some of the biggest mistakes or challenges that like people when they come to you or when you can see their books and you're just like, "Oh, here's what's going on." What have you seen in terms of like the pain points?
Yeah, I think you you hit a point that I want to chat through and add a little bit more detail to as to why it's important.
Mm.
You'll hear a lot of times like don't mix business and personal.
Hmm.
And there are some like legal entity um, protections that you override if use business for personal expenses too often. But I think the other thing, if we look at clean books as data and
Mm.
insights, what happens when you mix business and personal is the margins become really unclear. And I like to encourage my clients that we don't want to make your life hard, Like if you left your personal card and the business card is the one you have, like we're not hammering you, don't spend on the business card to make things difficult. It's about making sure the data is clear so that you can see what the actual margins are, so that when you're going to make decisions about whether you can invest in that coaching program or if you can go on that trip, you know that the data is accurate because you have maintained that separation between business and personal expenses. So that's a big one that I see. And it's true when you're using QuickBooks, for example, when your lunch, that's a business lunch, and your personal lunch are spent on the business card, it all goes into the same account.
Yeah,
So you can't really differentiate what was business and what was personal too clearly. And that's how things really get sort of unclear. And I find that business owners start to not trust the numbers if there's too much blending of business and personal. So that's one thing I see. And I just sort of encourage clients that, like, we want your data to be good. And
hmm,
so that's the reason why, of course, the legal protections also, but like we want the data to be something that you can use and trust. Another thing that I see pretty often is more like on the technical side where, um, like sales might be missing just because the business owner who is doing the books themselves might not know how to account for all the sales. Or one thing that we do in our monthly workflow is make sure we reconcile sales with your gateway platform or your payment processor with
mm,
what's showing up in QuickBooks. So we make sure they tie out and all of your sales are there. That's a big thing that I see sometimes is sales are missing, which that can throw off your whole equation if, you know, $2,000 of sales is missing, like that adds up. And so it makes your margins look off as well if you're not accounting for all the sales. So that's one thing I see. And then also just making sure you're reconciling the accounts, making sure you're tying everything out, as we say in the bookkeeping accounting world, making sure everything ties out so you know the data is accurate. So it's really small things, but it's small things that add up.
right.
And if there's data missing, then those margins, that net profit, gross sales, all of those things start to skew when you don't have all the data there.
That's true. And I think that there's something to be said for there's this idea that like, hey, there's a lack of clarity. And so you just really don't know and you're
Mhm.
kind of just a little bit loosey-goosey with everything and that's not really smart. And then I think there's also the idea that there's an emotional or mental toll that it also can take
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
even in my own business, if I kind of can, and I'm still far from perfect, but I know I have gotten a lot better. It is
Mhm.
just the idea of like I don't feel settled because I'm just not sure. And maybe I
Mhm.
am doing really great. And maybe my profit margins are really amazing. And maybe I do have plenty of money to invest in this and do this and give myself a raise and all of this. But I feel a little bit of a mental and emotional toll because I'm
Mhm.
just unsure. It kind of seems
Yeah.
like this, but I don't have like factual data saying, nope, here's where you're at, here's where you're trending, here's what it says, here's the year over year. Like all of it being
Mhm.
clear helped me feel so much more confident and like accomplished even because I'm like, oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
it. Like I am doing well. The numbers don't
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah, it's true. The numbers don't lie. And I think that's another thing that I like to encourage clients to remember is even if it's just small steps, sometimes we, for lack of a better word, we feel like we're on fire
Hmm.
because we don't have any proof that we're not. And I like to encourage people that their bookkeeping matters for two purposes, for filing your taxes at the end of the year and for also giving you the clues, insights, and data that you need to make decisions. So if inside your books you have a healthy profit margin, you know your average monthly spend, you know all of these numbers, I like to just encourage clients that that is proof that you're not on fire. So
Hmm.
even though you feel like you're on fire, we can reframe that feeling into, okay, let's ask different questions so that we can head towards the next path in our growth. And that's another cool thing is the data can really encourage you in a different path. And I understand things, it feels a little bit unclear. You may not really know what a good profit margin is. Like there's all these questions that come up. But once you get the reassurance that you're doing great, your profit margin is healthy, you've seen X percentage of growth year over year, I think that's permission to move forward with whatever the
Hmm.
next growth thing in your business for you is.
That's true. And I'm wondering because that is like a shift from like chaos, whatever, to clarity, and then the decisions that get to come from that clarity that you have. So, like the shift in the way you run your business, or deciding to hire, or, investing in certain areas, all of that comes when you do have that clarity. And also giving yourself, I think, permission to dream bigger. Like there's the space for it
Yeah.
now. You have that space because you have the clarity. And so, have you had kind of clients or stories that kind of have been able to transform their business? And maybe it is even just because of the clarity. It maybe isn't even like, oh, wow, but look at the 50% growth. No, it's just because now they know that there was growth there that they just didn't even realize before. Do you have any stories of clients who kind of had that shift in perspective simply because the clarity was there?
Yeah, I can think of a few. Most clients come to me without QuickBooks. They are at a stage of their business where they're growing. They have been managing their business finances, usually via Excel,
Hmm.
and they're seeing so much growth that they're like, I should probably leverage QuickBooks. So that's sort of the starting point for where most of my clients come to me. Um, and what's really cool is most of them, because they're managing it in a spreadsheet, they're not able to look at the income and expenses on a
Hmm.
regular basis because they're operating it out of a spreadsheet. So a lot of times, bookkeeping is inherently retroactive, but a lot of times, they might get behind with their spreadsheet. So you're looking at even months of data. But what's really cool is when they start getting consistent reports, they're like, okay, this is the income. Oh, this is great. Or now that they are looking at the income and expenses and looking at what the net profit is, and not only paying attention to the bank balance, they are able to see, okay, one client in particular, I thought this was like a really cool moment for me, is I gave her her reports and she's like, "Oh, this is so great. Like I didn't know we were doing this amount in revenue." And I'm like, "Your monthly operating expenses are pretty consistent and look at your net profit." And similar to what you were mentioning earlier, she's like, "Is that good?" I'm like, "That's a good net profit. Like that's
Right,
really
right.
good."
Yeah, yeah.
And so now she was able to think, okay, how do I add more clients? And it was such a cool light bulb moment because she's like, oh, I can just take on more clients. I'm like, yeah, you have the capacity, your expenses are in check, like you can take on more clients. And she did. She increased prices, she took on more clients. In her first year of business, she grossed six figures.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool for her.
Yeah.
But overall, what I see with most clients is they know that they can do the work to get the clients to grow the business. What's cool is when we have our meetings, our quarterly meetings, and I'm walking them through the data and they're able to see, okay, so which service is most profitable? And then they're
Mm-hmm.
able to ask more questions. Okay, how do I double down on this? Or like, what is this profit margin telling me if it's not the highest grossing service? Like, they get to ask really cool
Mm-hmm.
questions that help them think, okay, once I have my meeting with Kinaya next quarter, like what do I want that meeting to look like? That's the
Mm-hmm.
coolest part for me.
And I really love this goes back to again what I said at the beginning because you have such a specific niche in this
Mm-hmm.
travel industry. It's such an interesting way that you can kind of speak to like the not any every business is different and we all have our nuances, but there is something to be said from just understanding what it looks like what good profit margins are in the travel industry,
Mm-hmm.
just period, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also this idea of somebody consistently being alongside you having these conversations. Because yes, of course, like at the end of the year, we all, say, hey, to your accountant, like, here's what happened. Is it good? Is it bad? Do I owe? Do I pay? Like, and then it's just like
Yeah.
on to the next year. And, that's necessary to have, file your taxes and do all of that. But this consistent, like, understanding of what your numbers are doing and then making a plan based off of that and then checking in on that plan every quarter and then seeing where you're
Mm-hmm.
at. That is kind of like the next stage, I think, of growth for businesses and entrepreneurs and what have you. So I think that that's again a really cool kind of aspect of you in particular and kind of like how you walk alongside business owners. So for advisors who are like, okay, I hear you, I feel a bit behind, I'm a little bit overwhelmed, which is fine. That's okay. Would you still say, this is kind of what I'm hearing you say, but I want to make sure that I'm tracking. Like the first step that they should take towards moving towards clarity, is that like the QuickBooks, like stop just using Excel? Is that kind of like what you would say the first step is, or would there be something else?
The first step I would usually say for anyone who's not familiar with looking at their numbers, I would just say set a day every week,
Hmm.
log into your banking platform and look at your statement.
Okay.
So just take stock of what you spent that past week and what income came into your bank account that past week. And just what was it what you were expecting?
Hmm.
And it just like sit with it. I think
Okay.
that's a good exercise for people to do every week to just get in the habit of looking at the numbers and analyzing it. So if your expenses were X amount, and banking platform these days are really good because it will just tally for you the money in and the money out, and you
Hmm.
can get a quick tally. But I like to encourage people to start there if you don't leverage QuickBooks, if you don't have an Excel spreadsheet, to start there and just get familiar with doing that every week because it sort of builds a familiarity. It builds a muscle where you are used to looking at what you made and what you spent. It sounds really simple and trivial, and I hope if you're this person that you actually sit down once a week and do it because you'll just start to ask questions and you'll
Hmm.
start to get more familiar with it. And I think that's a great place to start. For those who are already on an Excel spreadsheet and you look at it pretty frequently, you use that spreadsheet to give to your tax accountant at the end of the year, that person, I would say, think about how you can use a tool like QuickBooks or even Zero and even if you're not ready to outsource your bookkeeping completely, get into the habit of categorizing the transactions and reconciling the bank accounts. Reconciling kind of is just a matter of looking at the ending balance in your accounting software and the ending balance on your bank statement and making sure they match.
Okay.
Um, that would be a good place to start because you start to see, okay, I spent how much on meals this month? And then you get to see the total.
Mm-hmm.
I spent how much on softwares and subscriptions? And you start to get familiar with the total and you get to see overall, okay, I brought in this much, I spent this much. And I think that's really helpful to try to get that, put together that big picture of what your overall net profit is.
Yeah, so that would be more like the next level system or routine, like you're comfortable, but then now you're doing the reconciling and you're doing it, you say
Hmm.
monthly?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah. Every
monthly,
month.
so that they're consistent, and if there is something like, uh-oh, then you actually pay attention and do something. You don't just
Yeah. Yeah.
buy.
You can see it. And the
And
other cool thing about doing it monthly, if you're at that level, you start to see the seasonalities in your
right,
business. And that's really important to keep in mind. I think there's a component of seasonality that is both what you feel. Like for a lot of us, the summer is a season where you like to slow down, kids are out of school, but then there may be a seasonality that your data is showing you that may not necessarily align with your summer season, or there might be peaks and valleys that you aren't aware of. That's good to keep in mind also by looking at your books every month. I think for travel professionals, that's a big one that I really like to encourage because seasonality and cash flow around seasonality comes into
right.
play.
Right. That is, yeah, that is a really good point because, and again, every business is different and it depends what area of the world you sell, who you sell to, all of the things. And then just, sometimes there's a random, like, couldn't have called that. And it just happens. But for the most part, like I've been in business now almost 10 years, and you're right in that, like, early on, I'd get to, a certain time of the year and I'd be like, oh my gosh, this isn't working. Nobody wants to book with me anymore. What am I going to do? But now I just know. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't bring in money that month. Like
Yeah.
this is it.
And you don't have to feel
And I don't
overwhelmed.
fear.
No.
And so for me, I look at it monthly. I also look at it quarterly because sometimes it crosses over. But I know when my high months are. I know when my low months are. I know, and similarly, there's a specific time of the year when people book and a specific time when they travel, and that makes a big difference in like when you're getting the money in. So paying
Mhm.
attention to those rhythms and peaks and valleys and what have you helps you understand and also plan and prepare, right? Because my expenses are pretty consistent throughout the year, and I
Mhm.
have myself and I have team members on payroll, and that stays consistent throughout the year. So I
Mhm.
myself need to know what income is doing so that I'm definitely covered for all things that
Yeah.
were required to run the business, with whether or not that month is high, low, what have you. So those are definitely things that we should pay attention to in this industry, because a lot of times there is no reason to freak out. It's just a knowledge thing of knowing what your business is doing at any time of year and then preparing appropriately for it. So if you have a good month, you don't just go spend it all as if like you won the
Yeah.
lottery, because that slow month is coming. Great. So when would you say then, I think this is maybe like the next level, when does it make sense for from a business, you know, maturity level or what have you, to bring on a bookkeeper instead of trying to manage it yourself? Like when does that kind of, okay, great. When you're reaching this, when you're doing this maybe amount of revenue, or you have these types of questions or issues or what have you, having a bookkeeper that you can rely on that helps you see all of this and keep it all organized is going to really be a benefit in your business, and probably also something that you can afford as like another, expense as well.
Yeah, I think generally my rule of thumb is when you are making consistent income and you have I would say you're making consistent income, but you're at a stage of growth where you can no longer manage it all yourself. That would be a good time to have a bookkeeper, especially if you have multiple streams of income, making sure all of those things are tracked properly, making sure expenses are tracked properly. Um, Another good thing, payroll, if you're running payroll, making sure that even if you run the payroll yourself, making sure you have someone who can help you map payroll to QuickBooks, Gusto, map those platforms so that everything is pulling in properly and mapped properly. Usually, I say if you're at a stage where you want to grow, hiring a bookkeeper is a good time to do that. So you can make sure the back office is maintained and also you're getting the insights you need to figure out which direction you want to go in as you grow.
Mm-hmm.
If you're still starting out and growing your client base, I would say get in the habit of updating your spreadsheet monthly and consistently and looking at the income, the expenses, and the net profit. But then once you start to grow and you're seeing that continual growth, I think that would be a good time to get some bookkeeping and accounting support.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And the goal here, I think, and the reason for this conversation is really just to help people feel more comfortable and confident, but also like this is freedom, right? Like the idea that you can have the clarity of what your business is doing and what your numbers mean. That freedom means something, not only personally, but it means something for your business and your future. So what would you maybe say to that? Is this like what does financial freedom actually mean and what can it give you and what are the benefits of that? Like why are we thinking that this is important, not only for ourselves but for our businesses?
Yeah, I think one really cool thing, and it's sort of like a progression. You usually start building your business, and the most urgent thing is taxes.
Hmm.
As you grow, you start to think about, okay, what can I do to progress my business forward? What can I do to bring in more income? And I think that's where bookkeeping and accounting is really a good source of truth for what's happening in the business week over week, month over month. But the really cool thing is that it's data. It's your data. It's your financial data, and it can provide you insights into what to do next and how to grow your business. And I think that the cool thing and the thing that allows business owners to have clarity is knowing what the baseline is. Sometimes if you're not looking at the numbers, you won't immediately know what are my monthly operating expenses.
Hmm.
You won't be able to say like what do I make on average in my business per month? Like we were talking about with seasonality, you wouldn't really have the insights to know, okay, these are the months where we see a dip, so how can
Hmm.
I plan accordingly? What's really cool is having all of this information at your fingertips really, I think, helps you build a business from a place of feeling calm. Like you don't have to be on fire, it doesn't have to be difficult. There are parts of business that are difficult, but the numbers don't have to be difficult. And it can give you the clarity that you need to know what to do next. And also the freedom. Freedom is a big thing. And I think everyone starts a business to have a level of freedom that they want.
Yeah.
And being able to know what to do next, how to grow the business, I think that is, I can't think of the word to describe, but it's just like you started it for something, you don't want it to fail. You want it to
Hmm.
grow, you want it to flourish, you want it to thrive. And so, really knowing where to go next helps you continue that freedom onto the future. And it gives you the clarity that you need to know what to do. I think, like you mentioned, like a lot of us were like, okay, what do I do next? Or can I afford this? Or um, how do I grow to a stage to make this thing happen? A lot of times we just don't have the insight to know. And so the numbers gives you the insight. It gives you the freedom to know what to do next and to continue your business forward.
100%. 100%. I love that. I think I'll add for me personally, even financial freedom I've realized, and I'm a competitive person. So I started a business and I'm like, more, 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 more. But then it's definitely not just about being rich. It's not even about like endless amounts of money. It really is about like this definition for me, number one, peace of mind, right? So I have now this freedom that gives me peace of mind because I know what everything is doing, that my business is sustainable and I'm not making decisions from a place of panic or or I don't know what I should do. I should just take all the trips because who knows? Like maybe I need them. No, like I'm coming from a very peaceful state of mind. And that means I'm making intentional decisions. And also like the things that I say yes to, the things that I say no to, I have a peace about it because I know where everything is at and what's going on in my business. And I think also I would add to that that there's flexibility and choice that is available to me because that is for me freedom huge. This flexibility that it's number one the reason I'm an entrepreneur, but like I have so many options based on where my
Mhm.
business is at and based on what I know about my business. And of course all of this has taken time. Growth is not overnight success for sure, but and I'm not done. I don't want to give that impression, but even for where I stand now there is a flexibility that I have in my not only day to day, but in my year. Like I can say yes to more time off or to doing certain things and supporting the life that I want to live based on what I know about my business and my numbers and all of that. And it also has allowed me to say, hey, now I get to dream bigger and make future like decisions and goals and what have you based on this financial clarity on what I want for like myself in long term, what I want to be able to do for my kids and my family, all of these things that is bigger than my business, but like my business is the vehicle. So I'm
Mhm.
paying attention to what is possible by this business that I've built and the freedom that it's given me to say, hey, what do I have for my dreams, for myself, for my family, what have you. And the numbers can back it up. And I can say, hey, I'm setting goals based on this because I know what my profit is and I know where my profit's going. And that feels really, really
Yeah.
good. And believe me, this is like a very recent kind of understanding. I think for a lot of people, and we're again all different, but like I know a lot of people are similar to me, is that I grew up what I would call very financially illiterate. And so I just kind of kept my head in the sand for so many years. And I'm not afraid of hard work. So I'm going to work really, really hard and I'm going to do all the things. But I still was like, I had no idea. Like, I'm literally hiding money under my mattress because I'm like, well, I don't know. It just it seems like a good idea. um, Literally and probably figuratively. But now I feel just getting a taste of what the knowledge can do and the clarity can do makes it feel so much better. So I think that would just be my encouragement. Um, if this sounds great, but where you are at right now, your books are a mess and your systems are a mess or whatever, just know that it's not too late to fix it and just start small and go from there. Is there anything else that you would say to people in terms of like encouragement or a call to action, if you will?
Yeah, I think I just like to encourage people that it's your data. The financial data is your data. It's the data that it's all coming from the cards that you swipe. And so, not to think of it as so, like, it's not so far outside of yourself. I like to encourage people with that. I like to say just if you feel overwhelmed by it, whether it's just you don't know what to do, you maybe had a bad experience in the past, just like you said, start small, reach out and get the support that fits for you at the stage of business that you're in. And then just slowly compound, just
Mhm.
slowly over time, compound the knowledge. And it's gonna get easier and it's gonna make more sense. And the cool thing is, one day you'll also have that light bulb moment where you're like, oh my gosh. And you feel proud of
Yeah.
what you've accomplished. You'll be able to feel proud of how far you've come in your business. Um, so just small steps over time and compound the knowledge, and it will get easier.
100%. 100%. So, thank you so much for this conversation. I hope that what you have helped us see today is that, yes, financial clarity has to do with the spreadsheets and the QuickBooks and stuff, but it's also more than that. It's about finding freedom. And that's what the true thing that people are after. And the QuickBooks and the spreadsheets and all those things help us get there, which is the amazing tools that we have available to us and all the resources and whatnot. And when we know where our money is going and what story our numbers are telling us, that means we can stop operating from a place of stress or what have you and make intentional decisions for the futures of our businesses. So that's the positive thing that I hope people are walking away from. If anybody would like to connect with you or just kind of understand like what resources or support that you offer, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my website is atlasandledger.com. That's a great place to connect with me. Also, Instagram, atlas_ledger is my handle. Open to messages or DMs there. Also, you can feel free to shoot me an email at kinaya@atlasandledger.com. If you have general questions, I encourage you to shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. Um, and yeah, it's been such a pleasure joining the podcast today.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you for everybody who tuned in today. Until next time, keep building businesses that give you the freedom to live and work on your own terms. We'll see you next time.